What's the moment you found out your happy marriage was a lie the whole time? My husband, Rob, was a regional equipment sales rep for an agricultural company, and from the day I met him, overnight trips were just part of the deal. He'd leave Tuesday morning smelling like his cedar deodorant, rolling suitcase in hand, laptop bag over his shoulder, and he'd be back Thursday night, tired and starving, asking what's for dinner, like clockwork. For 11 years, I never once questioned it, because why would I? He called every night at 8. He sent me pictures of gas station coffee and bad hotel art. He complained about diesel prices and rental car upgrades. He knew our routine so well that even 3 states away, he'd text me at 7 p.m. on the dot. Don't forget trash night. We had 2 kids, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and a house with a mortgage we could actually afford. Honestly, I used to tell my sister I got the good one. I got the guy who still opened my car door, who still remembered I liked my coffee with oat milk, not regular, who came home from every trip with a little gift, a keychain, a magnet, a stupid t-shirt from whatever gas station he stopped at, like it was a running joke between us. It started the way these things always start, which is to say it started with absolutely nothing at all. A normal Tuesday. He left for a 3-day trip to cover a territory out near the Ohio-Indiana border. Same as always. I dropped the kids at school, I went to work, I picked up dry cleaning, I did the thing you do when your life is boring in the best possible way, where nothing is happening because nothing needs to happen. It was Wednesday afternoon when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. A local area code, but not one I knew. I almost didn't answer because I was elbow deep in laundry, but something made me pick up. A woman's voice on the other end asked if this was Rob's number, and I said, well, this is his wife's number. Wait, who's calling? There was this pause, this long, uncomfortable pause where I could hear her breathing, and I remember actually laughing a little because I thought maybe it was a coworker or a scheduling thing. Then she said, I'm sorry, did you say his wife? And I said, yes, I'm his wife. Who is this? And she said very quietly, I'm his wife too. I want to tell you I immediately knew what was happening, but I didn't. I actually thought I'd misheard her. I said, I'm sorry, what? And she repeated it slower, like she'd rehearsed it in her head 100 times before actually saying it out loud. My name is Denise. I live in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I've been married to Robert for 12 years. We have 3 kids. I found this number in his phone under a contact labeled work supplier, and I've been staring at it for 2 days trying to decide if I wanted to know the answer. I sat down right there on my laundry room floor with a wet towel still in my hands because my legs just stopped working the way they were supposed to. 12 years, she said, and I was married to him for 8, so his marriage to her came first, not mine. I wasn't the affair. I was the second wife, the one who came after he was already someone else's husband. The next 45 minutes were the worst of my entire life. We stayed on the phone comparing dates, comparing photos. She texted me a picture of their wedding, and it was him. It was unmistakably him. Younger, heavier, a little more hair, but him, standing in a backyard in Iowa in a rented tux, holding hands with a woman I'd never seen in my life, a banner behind them that said, congratulations, Denise and Robert. I sat there staring at my own wedding photo in the other hand, him, in the same rented style tux, a different backyard, a different banner, and I realized he probably reused the same guy for both weddings. Some traveling officiant he found online because it was cheaper that way. That's the detail that broke me first. Not the 12 years, not the 3 kids. The fact that he cheaped out on getting married to me the same way he cheaped out on our anniversary dinners. Always finding the coupon, always finding the deal. Denise told me their marriage was registered legally, filed with the county clerk in Iowa. Mine was registered in our state too, which meant one of 2 things. Either he divorced her secretly and never told her, which seemed impossible, given she still called herself his wife and he still called himself her husband, or he never divorced her at all, which meant I was never legally married to my own husband. For 11 years, I had been someone's unknowing second family. The vacation, the affair with a mortgage, and I didn't even know it. I called him that night, and he picked up on the first ring, cheerful like always. Hey babe, just wrapping up dinner with the guys, I said. Denise called me today, and there was this silence. This exact same silence Denise had given me on the phone earlier, like it ran in the family of women who had married him. This specific silence of realizing the story was finally over. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He just said very quietly, I always knew this day would come. I just thought I had more time. Like he'd been planning for this moment his whole life. Like living a double life was a project with a deadline he was just hoping to push back forever. He came home 2 days later, not because he wanted to, but because he had nowhere else to go. By then, Denise had told him she was done, and he thought maybe I'd let him stay. Maybe I'd understand. Maybe 11 years of Tuesday morning cedar deodorant meant something to me still. And it did. That's the part nobody tells you. It did mean something. Even while I hated him standing in my kitchen, I kept thinking about the time he drove 4 hours home early because I had the flu and made me soup from scratch. I kept thinking, is that even real? Can a person fake that for 11 straight years? Or did he actually love both of us in his own broken, selfish way and just never had the courage to choose? The kids made it worse in ways I wasn't prepared for. My daughter was 9, my son was 6, and they loved their dad. They didn't understand why mommy was crying in the bathroom with the door locked. They didn't understand why there were suddenly lawyers calling the house. Denise's 3 kids were teenagers. The oldest was 17, and she found me on Facebook 2 weeks after everything came out and sent me a message that just said, "Were you happy with him at least?" Because I never was. And I didn't know how to answer that because the honest answer was yes. I was happy, or I thought I was, and I don't know which Which is worse, being happy in a lie, or knowing the whole time and staying anyway? Here's the part that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. Rob had 2 life insurance policies, one naming me, one naming Denise, both of us as sole beneficiary. Both policies purchased the same year, both for the exact same amount. When I asked our lawyer how that was even possible, how a man commits bigamy and insurance companies don't catch it, he said quietly, "It happens more than you'd think, especially when someone works a traveling sales job that gives them a legitimate excuse to disappear for days at a time. Nobody double-checks a man's marriage license when he shows up smiling with a gift and a good excuse." It turned out the trips to Ohio and Indiana weren't random at all. Council Bluffs, Iowa was almost exactly the same driving distance from our house as it was from Denise's, which meant for 11 years he had built his entire fake sales territory around a mathematical midpoint between 2 families. He'd chosen the job specifically because it let him disappear in a believable pattern. He wasn't even that good of a salesman, according to his own manager, who called me confused after everything came out, asking why police were requesting his travel logs. Turns out half his reported client visits were fabricated. He was clocking hours that didn't exist, padding his mileage, padding his story, living an entire second existence disguised as a work schedule. The divorce took 11 months because untangling something built on a legal impossibility is its own special kind of nightmare. My lawyer eventually discovered that because his marriage to Denise was never dissolved, my marriage to him was void from the start, which meant legally I was never his wife. I was simply a woman who had built a decade of her life, shared 2 children and a mortgage, with a man who was never legally mine to build anything with. There's no box to check for that on any form. There's no title for what I was. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't technically even a mistress. I was something the law hasn't invented a word for yet. About 6 weeks after everything blew up, I got another phone call, this one at 11 at night, which never means anything good. It was a woman named Priya who said she found my number the same way Denise did, going through his old phone, which he'd left at her place 3 months before any of this even came out. I remember standing in my kitchen in the dark, just holding the phone against my ear, thinking, here we go again? Like my body already knew before my brain caught up. Priya wasn't a wife, thank God, but she was something almost worse in a different way. She'd been seeing him for 2 years, believing he was divorced, believing the sad story he told her about a wife back home who cheated first, who he was just staying with for the kids' sake until they were older. She'd been planning to move in with him that spring. She'd already given notice on her apartment. She said, "I want you to know I'm not trying to hurt you more. I just needed someone to believe me, because when I tell people what happened, they think I'm exaggerating." I sat there on my cold kitchen floor for the second time in 6 weeks, realizing the version of him I knew wasn't even the third version. There was a whole rotation of us, a whole cast of women, each one thinking they were the only secret, each one thinking the others didn't exist. While somewhere in all of that, he was still driving around in his company car with his little gas station gifts, telling us all the exact same lies with barely any variation, like he had a script memorized so well he stopped even bothering to update it between performances. The financial disaster came next, and it was almost funny in how thorough it was. It turned out our joint savings account, the one I thought we were slowly building toward the kids' college funds, had been drained twice in the last 3 years. Once for a down payment on a truck Denise's family didn't know about, and once for a family vacation to Florida that I found out later wasn't with me or with Denise. It was with Priya. He had taken a full week off work, claiming a trade conference in Atlanta, and instead flown to Orlando with a woman I'd never even heard of at that point, using a credit card that was technically in both our names. Our joint credit was destroyed within a year, not because I did anything wrong, but because untangling 3 separate households worth of debt from one shared identity took lawyers, accountants, and eventually a fraud investigator who told me flatly, "This is one of the more organized cases I've seen in a while," which was somehow both a horrifying thing to hear and a strange, sad little validation that I wasn't crazy for how impossible it all felt to untangle. The custody battle over our 2 kids turned into something I never expected, because Rob actually fought for partial custody, not out of love, I came to believe, but because losing that fight would have meant admitting in open court exactly how many other households were depending on his income and his time. Admitting that meant the whole rotten structure would collapse in front of a judge instead of quietly behind closed doors. He wanted to keep pretending, even inside a courtroom, that this was a normal divorce, a normal custody arrangement, 2 good parents splitting time fairly. It took my lawyer presenting Denise's marriage certificate alongside mine, both dated the same decade, both still technically active, for the judge to finally understand this wasn't a normal case at all. I watched the judge's face change in real time, from routine boredom to something closer to disbelief. He actually stopped the hearing for a 10-minute recess just to reread the documents twice. My son started asking why Dad had 2 other houses now, like it was a fun fact instead of a devastation. He was 6, he didn't understand betrayal yet. He just understood that Dad now lived somewhere else, and sometimes there were other kids there too. And he genuinely thought for a while that maybe we could all just live together, like some big fun family, because that's what 6-year-olds do. They try to solve unsolvable things with the simplest logic they have. My daughter at 9 understood more and understood it worse. She stopped wanting to go to his visitation weekends entirely by the 3rd month. She started sleeping with the hallway light on again, something she hadn't done since she was 5. And when I asked her gently why, she just said, "What if you're lying to me too and not even knowing it?" And I didn't have an answer for that because how do you promise a 9-year-old that trust is safe again when her own father spent 11 years proving that even the people who tuck you in every night can be building an entire second life around you? Denise and I talk sometimes now. Not often, but sometimes. We didn't become friends exactly, but we became something like war survivors who happened to share the same enemy. She told me the worst part for her wasn't finding out about me. It was going back through old photos and realizing how many of his overnight work trips lined up exactly with our kids' birthdays, school plays, anniversaries. The things he missed for her, he was spending with me, and the things he missed for me, he was spending with her. He wasn't choosing one family over the other. He was just perpetually failing both of us in rotation, and somehow made us both feel lucky to have him the nights he did show up. I ran into him once, about a year later, at a gas station of all places, the same kind of gas station he used to send me pictures from, with his little inside joke gifts. He looked smaller somehow, older. His new girlfriend, I heard later, was a woman he met at a bar in yet another state. I don't know if she knows about us. I don't know if she'll ever get the phone call Denise and I both got. I thought about warning her. I actually got as far as finding her on social media, typing out a message, and then deleting it, because some lessons you can only learn the way I learned mine. At 2 p.m. on a random Wednesday, sitting on your laundry room floor holding a wet towel, while your entire life quietly reveals itself to have been someone else's secret the whole time. Priya and I actually met in person once, about 8 months after her call. It wasn't planned. We both ended up going to the same fraud investigator's office on the same day to sign paperwork related to the credit accounts, and we recognized each other immediately, even though we'd never seen a photo. Just something in the way we were both sitting in that waiting room, like we were bracing for one more piece of bad news. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat down next to each other, and she said quietly, "The truck he told me you two bought together with his own savings." And I said, "The truck that came out of our joint account. You mean?" She just nodded, and we both sort of laughed. This awful, hollow laugh, because at some point the details stop being painful and start being almost absurd, like listening to a magic trick explained badly. You're not amazed anymore. You're just tired. My daughter asked me last month if I still loved Dad, and I told her the truth, that I loved the man I thought he was, and I don't think that man ever actually existed. I loved 11 years of a very convincing performance, and grieving that is its own strange thing, because you're not just grieving a person, you're grieving every memory you have to go back and relabel. Was that trip really for us, or was he racing back from Iowa? Was that soup really made from love? Or was it guilt disguised as chicken broth? I still don't fully know, and honestly, I've stopped trying to figure it out, because some questions don't have answers that make the pain smaller. They just make it more specific. People ask me sometimes if I regret the 11 years, and I used to think the honest answer was yes. But I don't actually believe that anymore, because inside that lie were still real things. My kids are real. The way my daughter laughs at her own jokes before she even finishes telling them is real. The 4 years I spent building a garden in our backyard, that I still tend every single spring, even now, living somewhere else entirely, that garden is real. None of that gets erased just because the man standing next to me in the photos was busy being 3 different husbands to 3 different women at once. I've stopped trying to figure out which parts of him were real and which parts were performance, because I think even he doesn't fully know the answer to that anymore. What I do know is this: the woman who called me from Council Bluffs, Iowa 2 years ago gave me something I didn't expect. She gave me the truth, even though it destroyed both our lives at the exact same moment, and there's a strange kind of respect I have for her for that, because she could have stayed quiet. She could have let us both keep living our separate lives forever, but she didn't. And because of her, I finally know what really happened for 11 years instead of what I was told happened. As much as it broke me completely, I would rather know the real ending to a story than spend the rest of my life inside a beautifully decorated lie. Denise sent me a photo a few months ago of her oldest daughter's high school graduation, and in the caption she just wrote, "We did this part without him." I sat there staring at it for a long time before I understood why it hit me so hard. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was recognition. Because that's exactly what all 3 of us have been doing this whole time. Quietly rebuilding entire lives he was never actually necessary for building in the first place. We just didn't know it yet.